Hello and welcome back, and today, guess what? I want to talk about some brand new NAS. Are you guys sick of hearing me saying that yet? But let's face it, right now, in the world of network attached storage, it is all go. We're seeing a lot of the brand new hardware from all of the big brands coming to the table, and one of the devices that you guys have been waiting for a long time is one of the 53D series. It's the latest generation of the flagship series from QNAP. The D series, which technically spans a number of devices from the 251D to the 253D. The little D has been thrown around into the rack mount and desktop devices, but I think it wouldn't be an overestimation to say that the desktop 2, 4 and 6 bay device in the 53D series is the one that people have been waiting for the most. It gives you a hell of a lot of hardware, a hell of a lot of software capability, and all of it in a far more affordable manner for home users, prosumers and small medium businesses. Now today we are looking at the 6 bay. It's the first of the three that's arriving to market, and the 653D arrives with very similar hardware to the others, although there are a few differences, mostly good, one questionable that we will talk about later on. But for the most part, the 653D is better than the other 6 bay predecessor before it, the 653B, in almost every single way, which we're going to go through the video. Now, this device arrives right now for about 650 quid, and that's without tax and without the hard drive or SSD media inside. There is a 4GB model, and that's DDR4, and we'll talk a lot more about the specs later. But this is the 8GB model. The reason we've got the 8GB model here is we do want to talk a little bit about memory. We're going to be doing some upgrade videos after this involving upgrading it in official and unofficial capacities to seeing what we can do and what it can and can't receive. And moreover, we want to look at this device, not just the 653D, because I will be doing hardware reviews of the 2 and the 4 because there are differences. But I want to look at the range as a whole. And I'm also going to be using this device in some comparisons moving forward with a lot of those brand new Synologies we've been talking about as well. Because let's face it, you're at that point now where you've got a bit of money to burn, you've been waiting on those new releases, and you're thinking about which one deserves not just your data, but your money. So, we've used about a minute or so. Let's talk a little bit about this. Now, this is a quad-core powered NAS. It features the Intel J4125, and the J4125 is an Intel Celeron-based processor, probably one of the best out there at the moment in the J4000 series, and that processor supports AES-NI level encryption. It's got UHD graphics 600 built into it, so you've got your transcoding engine as well as a great utilization support of graphical created data. So if you are doing things with photos, if you're doing stuff with videos, if you're doing VMs, if you're doing surveillance, if your data is very visual based or has elements of thumbnail or transcoding and reshaping of data going on in the background, that's going to be very advantageous for you in a device like this. Now, on top of that, that CPU opens the door to DDR4 memory. So as mentioned, this does arrive with 4 or 8GB, depending on the unit you go for, and its predecessor supported DDR3L. So there's a big jump in frequency and efficiency overall between those memory types. That CPU arrives at a clock speed of 2.0 GHz per core, because it's a 4-core processor, and it can be burst up to 2.7 GHz per core. So that's a lot of performance possible. And for those that are going to utilize this for 1 or 2 VMs in the background, that's going to be very advantageous indeed. And particularly you Plex Media Server users. And of course, we're going to do a Plex Media Server test and QNAP Video Station video on this device very, very soon. But I've rabbited for long enough. Let's take a good look at it. Now, it actually seems a little bit smaller in the retail box than the 6 bays that came before. Maybe that's just my imagination. I have unboxed the 6 bay, but it was many, many years ago now. I think about two and a half when it first came about. But this device here arrives in, I think, a far more contained box. It's got the retail packaging there, the sort of brown box design from QNAP. We've got the label on the front that details a lot of information about it, and on the bottom there, lots of information about the hardware spec, what it can, what it can't do, and lots of information about the way where it sits in your hardware network environment. If we have a look at the top, we've got information there, and it does arrive with information about extending the warranty. Now, this is something I do want to talk about. You can extend the warranty to 5 years maximum on this device. Now, its predecessor arrived with 2 years of warranty. This device arrives with 3 years, apparently. So the 53D series is a 3-year warranty box. This was always one of the sort of buying factors for a number of you in the previous generations, where you were going to buy it, some of their competitors were sticking with 2 years, and this device was the previous generation, the B and the BE, were 2 years. So with other companies boasting 3 years and 2, it was one of those areas where people were kind of, ooh, I'm not sure. But 3 year standard warranty should be the go-to on flagship models like this, and I'm pleased to confirm that. And again, you can extend the warranty on this device after you get it. There's lots of information both within the QNAP NAS to allow you to do that, as well as QNAP's own website. And there's a QR code there on the top. Who's using QR codes still in 2020? Let me know. Anyway, I'm not going to try to unbox this here on the table because it's quite a big box. So let's see what we get for our money. Again, throughout this video, I will be talking about a lot of the accessories and things that are supported by the new QNAP. And I've got a whole host of accessories here to talk about ways in which you can upgrade it, because that's one of the good things about a lot of QNAP's NAS is whenever I do my comparisons or I focus on certain brands, one area where I will always give QNAP props is how you can evolve the platform. The glass ceiling is so much higher on a QNAP, and the ways to leverage what you want to do with your storage, not just on day one, but as you move forward, there's a lot more options for bespoke customization of your NAS within the network environment on a QNAP than you can get from pretty much any other brand. So here's our accessory box. Inside, we receive information on the warranty extension there. Very, very big deal. We have our quick start installation guide there, and I'm realizing my camera light is quite high up there, but you've got the manual there. Next, you have got your warranty information there for the 2 years of inclusive warranty. And you've got the screws there for 2.5-inch and 3.5-inch drives. We'll talk a little bit about those later. We have our PSU, and again, depending on the 2, 4, or 6 bay that you purchase, the PSU power will differ. This is a 120 watt PSU, and it's a proprietary 4-pin connector there, if I bring that to camera. And the other end is a kettle connector. Now, it's an external power brick, and I have mentioned this in other videos. I'm a big fan of an external power brick. I don't know why people give them such a hard time, particularly on a desktop level. I know people think it's just hanging off a table and you can disconnect and lose your power, but external power bricks are so much easier to repair, so much easier when you've got a problem to get one exchanged out. It's included in your warranty. And isn't it better this way than having it inside, where if you're trying to get a warranty replacement, you have to send the whole unit back, or you have to start unscrewing it, taking the unit apart to get to the PSU for your warranty, or even worse, having an internal PSU that raises the internal temperature of your network attached storage device whilst it's in operation. That can be a real bummer when it comes to using a NAS non-stop, for days, weeks, months at a time. Next, we've got our LAN cables there. Got a couple of LAN cables, and do we know the rating on these? Let's have a quick look. Cat5e cables, and they are supported in 1GB environments, but not just 1GBE, because this has a little bit more than that under the hood, but we'll get to that later on. Nothing more inside our box there. Oh, that's it. I think I let one of the screws out of the bag there. Next, we have our mains power cable, and again, wherever you're going to buy in the world, particularly if you buy from Span, but any store really, if you buy within your own region, this plug will differ. So if you are worried about not getting the right power cable, span.com will sort you out on that one, wherever you are in the world. If we go to the bottom of the box here, we can look at a significantly well-protected 6-bay there. Now, given what I said at the start of this video about how small that box seemed to me, that is a heck of a lot of packaging there to protect this 6-bay. I'm really impressed by the sheer level of protection being presented there for this 6-bay. And remember, when these devices are purchased, much like what I say about the external packaging, they don't really go in for pretty external packaging at this level. Those that watched my hardware review of the TS-653D will know that that is a NAS far more geared towards home and very small business users and sole users, maybe photographers as well. But that was a device that is more likely to be found on a high street shelf in your local electronics store and therefore external packaging is a lot more important in terms of its retail appeal and eye-catchiness. But this is less so, because the majority of people that buy this are going to buy it from redistribution. They're going to buy it from dedicated data storage companies, span.com, another plug. But on top of that, it will be purchased on e-sites. Consequently, they're not going to see the retail packaging until they've already got it. So the deal's done. But moreover, there's a lot of transportation between this device when it's formed out there in the East to how it's redistributed across the world, how it's held in warehouses, and ultimately shipped. So the real thing you're trying to protect against with this retail packaging is motion. You're trying to protect against shock. If, you can't really protect it from a pallet truck coming along and sticking its arm through the side. Nothing's really going to protect that other than titanium. And you can't protect against those things, but shock damage is this near invisible, in some cases, threatening force. So the reason I'm saying this incredibly long, boring story is simply that having that amount of packaging on such a compact box is very, very confidence boosting, because it makes me know that when this device arrives, it doesn't matter if it was thrown off a truck, it's going to survive. So let's remove the foam there. And again, that's the foam I've banged on about there for a minute or so. Let's get that out of there. And we can take a look at this incredibly petite 6-bay NAS. It's quite light as well. I mean, again, I haven't had an opportunity to look up how light or what the precise weight of this device is, but it doesn't seem like a lot. And I'm sure in the description, maybe on screen at the top of the video, we did talk about how much this weighs. This is a fantastically petite 6-bay NAS. Just to bring that to camera there, again, try and get that away from that crazy light I've got going. It's a very petite 6-bay NAS there. To put it into perspective, I mean, this is a 6 hard drive NAS. So I've got a hard drive here. That's how big a single hard drive is. And obviously these are loaded in like that, but most of us know just how big a hard drive is. That gives you some idea about just how compact this device is. If we put the hard drive against the front there, the hard drive is almost half the entire width of this 6-bay NAS, which is pretty impressive. We'll get back to that later on. So there is our chassis. It utilises a very similar design to that of the 653B that we saw 2.5–3 years ago. Again, that front panel is removable there. We've got LED lights built into the side, and we'll talk a little bit more about that hardware in just a second. Let's switch back to software, because that is something, when it comes to QNAP NAS, that we've all had to get used to over the last few years. When QNAP first appeared on this channel, and they've been around for a lot longer than that. They're much, much older than this YouTube channel and my blog and all the different websites. But QNAP was always a company that was largely associated with hardware. They had software, they had QTS, they had a bunch of really, really cool apps, but their software seemed to be far more usable. Their hardware seemed a lot more usable with third-party software in your own environment. And maybe that's what you're going to use anyway. But in recent years, the last 2–3 years, we've seen QTS, their own operating system, and platform ultimately that you're going to be interacting with, have a huge improvement in terms of stability, in terms of the applications available and the functionality. They've brought a lot of that mentality that we've seen, that innovation and that design and that change that we've seen in their hardware move into the software. And a lot of their software has now put them ahead of the pack from a number of their biggest rivals. How annoying was that light, right? Anyway, to put it into perspective, QTS is currently in version 4.4.2. Now, 4.4.2 or 4.4.3, I believe there's a beta floating around, it may even be available now, has reached a point where it's become its own beast. Now, originally, we did say that QTS and QNAP was kind of the Windows and Android, and Synology was your Apple and your Mac, your kind of smooth. Do it our way, it's really, really smooth, but don't try and experiment or anything, we won't let you. But in QNAP, it was very much an open field. Now, QTS has found a lovely middle ground now, where they have got, they've got a lot of applications, such as the basic standard stuff, your photo station, your video station, your music station, your file manager, you've got your surveillance station, you've got your standard multimedia apps, your email apps and stuff like that. But then after that, you've got this extra tier that have been introduced over the last few years, which take this kind of mentality and this logic and bring it to a whole new field. Surveillance. You've got Surveillance Station, but then you've also got QVR Pro. You've got 8 camera licenses for QVR Pro included in this, and it is an enterprise-grade surveillance platform that you can utilize via your web browser, but more efficiently and to a larger degree can be utilized with mobile phone applications and client apps for PC and Mac platforms. You've got Photo Station for your photos, but you've also now got QMAGI, the AI-powered photo recognition tool that allows you to access all of your photos in a far more user-friendly way using AI-powered recognition. So it will recognize people and let you tag them and group people together, recognize things, items, locations, and more. It takes all of that logic and improves it vastly. So you've still got both tools to different kinds of user. File Station, File Station's great for managing files and looking around, but it's not enough anymore. Now you've got QSearch, QFiling for far more business level access and organization of your files within a NAS. And along with that, you've then got more targeted tools that are more centered around those platforms. So in the case of multimedia, you have got Multimedia Console, this single portal access point that allows you to manage and index and control how and where the NAS finds its sources of information. So you can choose which files and folders you want your photo, video, music applications to index and get their libraries from this one app. Not have to go to all of the individual apps. You can go to this one portal that has all of the apps and go, I want that to do that, that to do that, that to do that. I'm done. On top of that, it allows you to say where you want exceptions, file types you don't want listed, files and folders you never want searched, you naughty boy. On top of that, you've then got that file management side of things where you've got QFile and QSearch along with the the file management side. But then you've got things like hybrid mount and you've got virtual JBOD, which are genuine game changers that allow you to create pools of storage on this NAS that can be seen as local storage on other devices and vice versa. Hybrid mount allows you to take cloud services like Google Drive, Dropbox, OneDrive and more and make that storage appear within your system as localized storage to be seen, treated and interacted with just like the hard drives in your NAS, which is great for backups and synchronization, but it allows you to bolt on storage both in either direction in the most intelligent and user-friendly way. And while we're on the subject of synchronization and backing up, Hybrid Backup Sync 3 is still, in my opinion, the best central management tool for controlling an entire backup array. If you are running a multi-tiered backup strategy of USB storage, NAS to NAS storage, NAS to not other kind of server storage, NAS to local, NAS to cloud, any of those different systems of backup between devices can be managed via this one incredibly user-friendly tool, and it's still to date the most configurable tool, I think, for backing up, and it's included for free. I'll say for free within the cost of your device. So their software has evolved leaps and bounds, and that I haven't even touched on some of the more enterprise and business-led applications, which will be particularly interesting to business users out there who have looked at their long-running association with Google Drive and Dropbox and stuff and realized 3 or 4 years down the line they've been paying so much every month with nothing to show for it. You can use tools like BoxSafe to synchronize with GSuite and Office 365 and have that wide range of tools currently available to you on those cloud platforms for your customer relationship managers and CMSs and emails and files and more, and have all of that data living either on the NAS or synchronized to the NAS, and manage that data in a user-friendly and intuitive way to duplicate accounts, duplicate emails, search wide, far and wide across all of those data platforms using those tools. What I'm saying is we've gone from a system where QNAP was largely known for their hardware to another age where they were known for both, to a point where they've really become their own beast. I haven't even touched on hardware innovations outside of this box like Thunderbolt, 10GBE and more. And then while you are interacting with this device and you're utilizing it within your home or business for surveillance with IP cameras here, an email server there, a WordPress server for your website, your multimedia over there for Plex Media Server, or one of the many multimedia applications, first and third party, available on this device, you are looking at very much a complete solution now. And that's one of the biggest takeaways you should have from the review of the 53D series. We will be putting it through its paces, so this is not the final conclusion of the review in it. That's why this is called a hardware review, not just a review. We will be putting it through its paces to see if a lot of those promises are fulfilled. But it's worth saying that this device arrives with a huge amount of potential in both hardware and software that I hope it can deliver on. But let's switch back to the hardware for a while. Now, the front panel here, it's plastic there. The majority of the chassis is actually plastic. There's metal inside and metal there on the rear. We'll go a little bit more into the ports later on. If we go to the side panel here, there's a little switch. Flick that down and the front panel is removed. And again, that front panel semi-transparent. I don't know how well you can see it there. And pop that there. Now, what we see on the front, let's get rid of this little bit of plastic, shall we? Because it won't half make this video a lot easier. Let's peel that off. I'll get this ready for you guys at home. Let me know in the comments if you loved or liked that. And we can take a good look at what this device is all about. There is our 6 hard drive bays there on the front. There's the LED lights we've discussed earlier on. And these LED lights, there's one for each of the individual hard drives. There's one for system activity, one for network activity, and one for simple status updates on the device. There are 3 color code system, green, amber, red. Obviously good, not so good, bad. And we've got a USB port here on the base of the device for USB backups. Now, those USB backups that are possible with that port down there, there's lots of different options for you. Now, before I talk about the USB port there, it's worth highlighting this device supports a myriad of different USB devices, and we will touch on some later on in the video. But what I will say is USB backups have, to me, have never been more important. Such simple things as a one-touch copy button on the front. Don't get me wrong, it is a bit rudimentary and it isn't the most groundbreaking stuff. This kind of stuff's been around for at least 5 to 7 years in the world of servers. But what I will say is the day they get rid of this kind of stuff is the day I lose faith in this industry, because USB backups are probably still one of the easiest ways to have another tier of backup strategy. Having a cloud account can be expensive and you need to get a lot of space and have a good internet connection. Having another NAS is incredibly expensive. You have to buy more hard drives. But a simple USB backup using just an external USB drive, connecting it to that port and just clicking that button and backing up the contents of a USB you might use every day to the NAS, or backing up preset folders or the entire NAS to an external drive, can't be overlooked. It's incredibly easy. And with multiple ways to do the backups, such as differential backups, such as synchronization backups, time managed backups, and more, there's just so many ways in which using a USB backup as another tier in your backup strategy is not only incredibly cost effective, it's incredibly sensible. So, if we carry on talking about this device here, are you pleased that box was empty before I throw it over there? Let's take a look on the inside of this device. Let's get one of these trays out of here. Lots of protective plastic there. Now, these trays are plastic. They've got screw holes for 2.5-inch drives built into the base, and they are click and load trays. That is to say, you remove the sides, remove the other side, grab a hard drive, and again, so you got Iron Wolf there, currently available, 16 terabytes in size. So on a 6-bay like this, you are talking a ridiculous amount of storage there, straight off the bat. If we pop that in there, you put a clip on one side, you put a clip on the other side, and there you go. The drive's in there, nice and simple. And you install the drive, and that's it. You can run the device on a single hard drive if you choose. Bit daft on a 6-bay, but you can either partially populate it or fully populate it. You've got lots of RAID level supported on this, such as RAID 0, to combine all your storage, but you've got no safety net. You can have a RAID 1, where it's 2 drives mirror to one another, and they're read and written to simultaneously, but you end up with 2 drives with exactly the same data on them. So it means you can lose one drive if it breaks and your data's safe. Or a RAID 10 will effectively halve the storage, where you have 3 disks paired with 3 disks. And in that scenario, you have 3 disks of storage but you have a lot of degrees of failure. It can lose up to 3 disks technically, maybe even more. I wouldn't risk it because it all depends on the pairing. And then you've got ones like RAID 5 and RAID 6, which are 1 and 2 disk parity levels that allow you to get the best amount of storage versus cost you can have, but obviously the performance dips ever so slightly. Not a lot these days. Things have got very, very good in terms of RAID functionality, but I will add that. Now, if we remove all of these trays, let's have a look, let's remove all of them. We can take a good look inside this device about that storage area, because one thing about NAS that's often overlooked is cooling and efficiency. It's one thing to have a NAS that's going to be on 24/7. You think, oh, I can access my storage, it's fine. But if it's not generating low enough temperatures while it's being utilized and it isn't controlling the internal heat, it's going to depreciate the values of your read and write as well as be detrimental to the internal hardware of your device. So if we have a look inside here, we can get some idea about what this is about on a hardware level. So inside you have got those 6 SATA bays there at the back with the 2 active cooling fans behind them. Now those active cooling fans will be drawing air over those drives in a very useful way. There is passive ventilation built into the side there, more passive ventilation built into that side there, and on the base of the device, even more ventilation under each of those bays. There's loads of ways in which active cooling at the rear, working with passive cooling around the chassis, will be beneficial. If we look at the side, you can see a memory bay there. Now there is 2 memory bays built into the side of this device. Now again, DDR4 memory is supported inside this device, and this is the 8 gig model, so it's 2 sticks of 4 gig DDR4 memory. Now if we take a little look and have a look at those modules, let's have a look, remove one of those, we can see there is our memory, the DDR4 memory there. Now I will state this memory is DDR4 2400, and again we are going to be doing testing with crucial memory up to 2666 megahertz. So it's going to be interesting to see if 1, crucial memory works on this device flawlessly, and 2, can we exceed the manufacturer's minimum, because QNAP and indeed Intel state this CPU should not be used for more than 8 gigabytes of memory. And in previous videos we do try to stick with that, but we know those of you that are going to utilize this device for virtualization, which again is going to be so good to test out on this device, we want to see just how much memory we can put inside this device and keep things stable. So do look out for that. At the top here, we have what I believe is an LCD panel built into the top, but we won't know for certain until we power the device up. Previous generations of this device have featured an LCD panel built into the top of it. That LCD panel is to give you real-time information about your storage, give you more information about the IPs, temperature and more. So it's quite useful to have that on there as a quick glance item to know how your system's doing, and also can be used for reporting errors and stuff like that. QNAP have, I would say, 2 out of 3 always included LCDs on their bigger devices, because a lot of you need to have a quick glance to see what's going on, and LEDs are not as useful for all that. Now as mentioned, the base of the device has got plenty of ventilation there. We've got the rubberized feet that raise the device ever so slightly off the ground. But let's face it, let's get to the business end of things. While the light goes a bit crazy there after the chassis, let's talk about those ports. Now, there's some things about this chassis that I love. There are a couple of things that I am less keen on, but I'll talk about those later on. But let's talk about this chassis a little bit. Now we have got those rear fans. They've gone to a slight change, slight redesign there for the rear fans on this device over its predecessor. Slightly different, slight change in design there. And again, the fans inside seem pretty much largely the same as they've always been. We have got the PSU port there on the base of the device. Next thing is the USB ports here. Now we've got the USB 3 port on the front, we've got a USB 3 port on the rear, and we have 3 USB 2 ports. Now this is the first thing that left me a little about the device when I first heard about it. USB is not that important in NAS, it really isn't. But QNAP is a company that has so many ways in which you can upgrade the device in way of accessories. It's like a Barbie showroom. You can do so much with regards to upgrading all the accessories on this. Notwithstanding internal upgrades, such as upgrading the memory, you've got the ability to add new network ports, if you so choose, with supported network adapters. This is a Wi-Fi 6 card that didn't work in a previous gen, but I understand it will work now. I will be running a test. You can add USB to 5 GBE network ports with their own USB to 5 GBE adapter, but that requires USB 3. You've got more and more accessories arriving from USB dongles. If you don't want to use their own official remote controls, you can then use USB Bluetooth adapted remote controls and other USB devices on this. If you run some of that HDMI software that I'm going to talk about later on, you can connect keyboard, mice, wireless controllers, gaming controllers for RetroArch, loads of things. QNAP is a company that, although the majority of people don't think USB on NAS is important, they seemingly do, which is why I was so annoyed when I saw one USB 3 port there and one on the front and the other being USB 2. Now, in the spirit of fairness, it's worth highlighting that USB 2 is all you need for a lot of peripheral devices. If you're going to use a UPS, if you're going to be utilizing printers, if you're going to use controllers, half of the devices I've talked about so far in this video do not require USB 3. However, if you are going to use external storage, the speed difference between USB 2 and USB 3 is huge, not even just the power output. And this isn't USB 3.1 Gen 2 that I'm talking here, like 10 gigabit. I'm talking standard 5 gigabit USB 3. And particularly with their expansion series, the TR range and the TLC range, so the hardware RAID and JBOD USB supported expansion devices, these all arrive with connection via USB 3, and you've only got the port on the front and then the port on the back. Now, the previous generation had way more USB 3 ports. I think it had 5 USB 3 on it, which can't draw that much power. So yes, I was quite surprised when this device reached us, right in the final stages, we saw that it had been changed to 2 USB 3 ports there. Now, maybe that was to bring the price down. Maybe it's something to do with the CPU in question, but it is just the 2 USB 3 ports. Now, moving things up, let's talk about those LAN ports. Let's talk about 2.5 GBE. This device supports 2.5 GBE on the rear there. That means, thanks to link aggregation, you can have up to 5 gigabit Ethernet. Now, the majority of you might have heard me say that, aside from thinking, wow, this review's going on a bit, but stick with me. But a lot of you may have heard that and gone, 2.5 GBE sounds good, I'm not using it. Everything I've got is 1 GBE and my business use is 10 GBE. Why do I want 2.5 GBE? Well, several reasons. One, a lot of standard day-to-day appliances are now starting to arrive towards the end of the year, and currently, I would say, with 2.5 GBE, we're seeing more day-to-day routers and some ISPs out there producing routers that have 2.5 GBE. On top of that, Wi-Fi 6, baby. Wi-Fi 6 is providing speeds now that are significantly better than standard 1 gigabit Ethernet. So the last thing you want is, when choosing between a NAS and using a cloud service such as Dropbox and Google Drive, that because your internet connection is really good, that a NAS is going to be slower than Dropbox. What is that? That's madness. So the idea of incorporating 2.5 GBE on a NAS for an ever-growing network landscape, now that the industry has largely all agreed on Wi-Fi 6 and that network providers have all kind of jumped on board with the affordability of 2.5 GBE, given the manufacturing cost of 1 gigabit Ethernet RJ45 is near identical to that of 2.5 GBE, it has now become that 2.5 GBE should be the minimum. Because if you're buying a NAS now, you're going to be using this for 3 to 5 years minimum. So you want to know that as the rest of your network appliances and indeed your network environment upscales, that this isn't left behind. Now, 2.5 GBE is still not at what I would say the peak point, but it's getting closer, 80% of the way there, and there's just going to be a turning point. Now, talking of network connections, at the top here we have a PCIe slot. Now, this is another area which I'm mostly pleased about. As I mentioned earlier on in the video, QNAP is a brand that more so than most NAS brands out there, gives a huge amount of diversity, a huge amount of scalability on their storage. And I mean that in every sense. I mean in terms of the hard drive you install, to the devices you connect with it and inside it. And the PCIe slot on this device is just another big part of that. You can include more LAN ports if you choose, 1 GBE, 2.5 GBE, 5 GBE, and 10 GBE if you so choose. You can add wireless connectivity, and yes, I am going to install this card inside here. You can add combo cards. You can add internal M2 and NVMe cards inside this device. And what that means in real terms is your hard drives inside here, once they're combined in the right RAID, with the average hard drive given something between 150 and 260 megabytes per second, based on the RAID array, based on the enterprise nature of the drive, and then multiple drives together will create faster speeds increasing around 70 to 120 megabytes, again, based on the enterprise nature of the drive. On a RAID array, you get a big old amount of storage. Now, the 2.5 GBE, whether you're using on its own, so you can get up to 250 megs, or combined together to get up to 500 megabytes per second connectivity, or installing a 10 GBE card and getting 1,000 megs, there's a lot of values to play with there in terms of what the device is capable of and what it can output. But the sky's the limit, because you can install cards that allow you to install NVMe SSD drives like the Ironwolf 510, another incredibly unsubtle plug there, that allows you to add SSD supporting cache to those hard drive bays. You can have a bunch of storage which has then got an area, a smaller area of SSD cache to vastly improve the internal operations and the output at the rear to take advantage of those speeds. So that's really good stuff. On top of that, QNAP's one of the brands that still allows you to use SSDs in those dedicated bays if you use a PCIe card like the QM2 series, and allows you to use them for raw storage. So let me paint you a scenario. You're a photo video editor, maybe you're a VM business that uses VMs, whatever. But you've got your hard drives inside with your hard drive array. You've got 2 SSDs on a PCIe card inside there, and you've got your 5 GBE there. You can create a scenario where live work and live editing can be done on the SSDs, on a small area of SSDs on that PCIe card, which can then be synchronized with the hard drive. So not caching, but the live, really important data that requires good throughput can be done on those SSDs. And then the hard drives can be accessible by those lower in the tiers of access. Those of you that work in distribution, in sales, basically the metadata you strap around your finished product. This allows you to create that tiered storage system manually or automatic with Q tiering. And then on top of that, you have increased network capabilities. Now, it's not all great and fantastic. There's a couple of bumps along the road. For example, the PCIe slot on this 6-bay is PCIe Gen 2 times 2, which is good, and it's just like its predecessor, the 653B, that arrived with PCIe Gen 2 times 2. But it does mean that although it will support the majority of the QM2 card series from QNAP, you're going to have less bandwidth to play with. Not vastly amount, you have to maximize the 10 GBE and the NVMe SSD on like the combo card that has 10 GBE and NVMe SSD bays. But it's worth highlighting that the 2-bay in this series does feature PCIe Gen 2 times 4. So that is a performance difference there between them. You're still going to get a huge amount of throughput, and as mentioned, you would have to max out the NVMe SSD utilization and the 10 GBE to start seeing any kind of bottleneck, which I don't think you'll do in this device with this hardware architecture and that CPU. If this was like a Ryzen or an Intel Core processor, that would be a different conversation. But it is worth highlighting that it's not all perfect. There are the odd bumps along the way. The final port to talk about is that HDMI port. It features an HDMI output. Now, HDMI on this device is just like its predecessors. It supports HD Station and isn't just connecting a monitor and then being able to see what you'd see on the web browser. It's so much more than that. QTS on this device is accessible via mobile phone applications, via client apps for PC and Mac, and can be accessed in a web browser. HD Station is a complete parallel separate access point for apps that have got a visual resource. So again, QVR Pro, Video Station, Plex Media Server unofficially, and things like Kodi unofficially, running VMs and more. You have a complete separate user interface for a large connected monitor, display, TV at home. You can then use infrared remote controls, and these are purchased separately, that will allow you to just click along and watch your media, or browse the cameras in your home or business, or take it one step further. You can utilize devices such as keyboard and mice, just connected USB keyboard mouse, and create a KVM keyboard video mouse setup for running a virtual machine, running Ubuntu, Linux virtual machines. Use some of the free Windows tester, what are they called, trial versions of Windows that you can download directly from the QNAP Virtualization Station platform on this device, and run a VM locally. You can run a PC on this, have it connected, keyboard, mouse, monitor, and at the same time, and this is the good bit, connect it to your network, and all of your connected users and all of your connected devices like your Amazon Fire Stick, your Alexa, your home security system, your IP cameras, all of them are still running. All of your connected users running simultaneously at the same time that someone is using this device over HDMI. It's a huge amount of multi-user environment, a number of you can take advantage of. Now, I mentioned virtualization there because I still believe to this day that QNAP has the best virtual machine platform in Virtualization Station 3. Don't get me wrong, they have more than one, just as mentioned earlier on. They have the tiered approach. You've got Container Station for containers. You've got Linux Station, where you can deploy the latest version of Ubuntu VM directly from this device in about 6 clicks. Just log into the device, and within 6 clicks and about 6 to 10 minutes of downloading and installing the package, you can run a Linux Ubuntu, I think version 18.03 currently, or maybe version 06, directly from this device. And these VMs can be accessed via the web browser anywhere in the world over the network or the internet, or locally, keyboard, mouse, monitor. And they take it one step further with things like RetroArch that allow you to run an arcade machine, something I'm hoping to do with this device, or maybe the 4-bay, as well as other keyboard, video, mouse tools too. And Virtualization Station is available via the HDMI application and desktop utilization. There's a huge scope of possibility with this device, where what you pay for the base model is just the beginning. You can then scale up as you need. And that HDMI port is also worth highlighting. It is HDMI 2.0. So there's a 4K 60 frames per second connection. In real terms, where you're going to see that advantage, you're going to see it watching 4K media. You're going to see it in your surveillance setup when you're running high-end cameras, or you want more cameras in your camera feed running simultaneously. You get a larger degree of resolution and a higher frame rate, which can make all the difference. And if you are going to run a surveillance setup, remember, standalone surveillance solution, cameras dotted all around, but all your home and business users can still interact with the device with their own preset accounts and own preset files and applications. It is a multi-purposing tool, and it is certainly one of the best things that I've seen from QNAP in a long time. It is not perfect. Again, I've already mentioned a dozen or more pros. Cons, of course, are, for example, the PCI on the port being 2x2, and that memory being 2400. It is a very, very tiny drop, a drop in the ocean in both cases, and it certainly does outdo its predecessor in practically every single way, and that still goes for 4K and more. 4K and 1080p transcoding, all inclusive to this device, but we will be testing the extent of that in our Plex Media Server and Video Station testing very soon, and we're definitely going to keep an eye on that 8 and 10-bit HDR media. But this has been my hardware review of the TS-653D. If you are interested in learning more, click subscribe. If you have enjoyed this video, click like. Go to the description, find my full breakdown review of this device, which should be live vaguely the same time as this video, and stay tuned for lots of different content videos on this and how it compares with its rivals. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.